Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley, and every week we bring you the story of people who are making the lives of others better. Improving other communities is part of the work of Rotary. Rotary International has 1.2 million members, Rotarians we call ourselves, in 36,000 clubs around the world. Ours is an unusual model. It is online, it's asynchronous, it's geographically distributed, it is highly flexible. And it is a model that is really good for people with a heart for service, but may think to themselves, I've got this crazy schedule. How do I get involved given that? We've got a system for it, and we hope that you'll take an interest. You can learn more at rotary.cool. That'll get you to us. Now, one of the really cool things we do is share amazing stories. And our speaker today, Robert Freeman, has actually told us a little bit about the Global Uplift Project before. But over the 3 years since we last talked to him, a lot of cool things have happened. He has got a project in motion that is absolutely fascinating, and I told him I want us to have this as a story that we can share, and he was absolutely kind in saying happy to make time for that. Robert, welcome to the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. I hand the mic over to you.
Rushton, thank you very much. And that's a pretty inspiring story about the Rotary of Silicon Valley. Is that the only electronic, asynchronous, like you said, distributed Rotary in the
There,
world?
there are actually several hundred online clubs, but
Mhm.
remarkably few built exactly like ours is. And so it's exciting for us to be able to just use this model to share stories. Because we're recording, we're essentially serving our speakers as we go, which we love doing.
Thank you for that. Well, let me get into it. And thank you for having me. As Rushton said, my name is Robert Freeman. I'm the founder and I'm the executive director of the Global Uplift Project. And you can see the title there, A Simple Plan to Change the World That's Working Today. By the time we're done, I want you to hold my feet to the fire and let's ask this question. Does this look like this is actually working? And could it, in fact, change the world? Let me get into it. That's the first project I ever built. It's in Naramoru, Kenya. It's a classroom. I was a teacher at Los Altos High School. My kids were complaining about how bad the world was. And I said to them, well, what are you guys going to do about it? And they very fairly said, well, Mr. Freeman, we're teenagers. What can we do? And without thinking about it, I said, I bet if each of you did just a little bit, I bet it would rock the world. Well, we didn't know what that meant. It sounds like something you could put on a bumper sticker and it might have just as much depth. But everybody was intrigued. And so in the spring of 2007, I challenged everybody in the school, big assembly in the big gym. I said, if you guys will all put in $1, I will get a classroom built for you in Africa. You never heard 1,770 teenagers be so quiet. Well, we went ahead and did it. The school had 1,770 kids. They put in $1,851. And I was like, OMG, now I got to get a classroom built in Africa. Well, our school, 1851, wasn't enough. So I hustled around to four other schools, Gun High School in Palo Alto, where my kids were going to school, St. Francis and Mountain View. 5 schools altogether. We raised $9,000 from 9,000 teenagers. And that's the classroom we built. People thought it was the Taj Mahal. And to them, it was. There it is, cut stone on a concrete foundation, sheet metal roof. It'll be there for 50 years. And the miracle was nobody was into it for more than $1. And that became the model. And this is the essential idea. Everybody gives just a little bit, and we use all of that money. I'm going to come back to that to help the poorest people in the world help themselves. That's the whole model. Let me go on. What have we done with this? Since that summer in 2007, we have completed as of this morning, 592 projects in 26 developing world countries. I mean, the poorest countries in the world. They're all focused on education, low-cost infrastructure for education, classrooms, science labs, libraries, latrines. We do a lot of playgrounds, actually. Whatever it takes to make the educational facility more effective. Over their lives, these projects will help about 3.7 million of the world's poorest people have just a slightly better chance in life. These are some projects we've done just for clubs, Rotary clubs in the Bay Area. That Kenya slide, that's a library we built in the Masai Mara in Kenya. We did that for Walnut Creek Rotary. On the top right there's a classroom we built in Nicaragua for 3 Santa Cruz clubs, Santa Cruz Rotary, Santa Cruz Sunshine Rotary, and Soquel Rotary. The one on the lower left there is a vocational center we built in Tanzania. We do a lot of work in all these countries, by the way. Let's see, Belmont Rotary, Palo Alto Rotary, Livermore Rotary, San Ramon Rotary. And on the lower right, remember the Aceh tsunami in Indonesia? Wiped out everything. That's a classroom we rebuilt for the kids there. That was funded by Los Altos Rotary. Let me keep going here. This is super important. I said at the beginning, and we use all of that money to help the poorest people in the world help themselves. I want you to look at that under uses. In the second category there, it says operations, 51,000 and change. That's what it cost to run the business last year. That's the website, the literature, the telephones, the direct mail, software subscriptions, paying the CPA. That's it, 51,000. But now go up to the sources, see foundations. I've gone out to private foundations and raised money to cover our operating expenses, explicitly on the proviso that they will cover our operating expenses. And the result is, as long as that foundation number is larger than the operations number, every dollar anybody donates goes into their project because somebody else is covering the overhead. We don't know anybody else that can claim and demonstrate this. Is it working? Well, that's what it looks like in the last 18 years. I retired from teaching in 2016 right here, and you can see what happens when you can devote your full energies to a project. What about this year's project? We're uplifting the scientific capacity of the entire nation of Uganda. I know that sounds almost psychotically ambitious, but it's actually not. We're doing it by installing 50 of our science labs in a box at 50 under-resourced high schools throughout the country. We have the deep endorsement of all of the Rotary International within Uganda. Science lab in a box, it's a metaphorical box. It's all the equipment, the supplies, the instruments, and the curriculum you need to be able to do world-class laboratory work in biology, chemistry, and physics. There's about 20 of them installed in 4 countries around the world. And here's the thing that really triggered this idea for us. We installed one in Uganda about 1.5 years ago, and within 6 months, their scores on nationally normed science exams, SAT equivalents, were up 80%. And you can understand why. It's very hard to learn the abstractions of science from dog-eared textbooks and, tired teachers on a blackboard with chalk. I mean, and that's what it is. But when the kids can actually get their hands on the experiments, it blows their minds. Let's keep going. Here's what it is. In phase 1, which we're in right now, we'll install 17 SLaBs. And as you see, it has the support of Rotary International. In phase 2, we're going out to the big tech companies, the Apples, the Metas, the Twitters, the Googles, and asking for their help to do another 33. Altogether, we'll do 50 of these SLaBs. This is the metric, and this is mind-blowing. If we can raise the GDP of the economy by 1/1000th of 1% in 10 years, it pays for itself 200 times over. One SLaB costs $3,000. Oh, by the way, the local people in Uganda say, we'll way more than do 1/1000th of 1%. We can do 5/1000ths of a percent because scientific talent is so scarce in this country. If you do 5/1000ths of 1%, we've all passed 4th grade arithmetic, that 200 times over becomes 1,000 times over. The program pays for itself 1,000 times over if we meet what they say they can do. This is the philosophical foundation of the whole thing. Why science? Why pick science to try to uplift the developing world? If you live in a pre-scientific society, how do you know what you know? The philosophers call this epistemology. How do you know what you know? Well, you've got superstition, you've got tradition, you've got folklore, you've got mythology, you've got gossip, you've got fairy tales, you've got magic. That's how you know what you know. Now, notice the difference between a scientific society. How do you know what you know? Observation, measurement, analysis, hypothesis, experiment. Which do you think is a more effective epistemology? Well, it's obvious which one it is. The Western world has adopted science, and that's why its growth is not only higher, but growing at a higher rate, which you can see in the upper slide. This is the essential thing we're doing. We're trying to change the mindset of an entire developing world nation. Now, why is this so exciting? Because working at a national level gives us a lot more capacity than simply working at an individual village level, which is what most projects work like. When we're finished with Uganda, there are 53 other nations in Africa that we will take this project to. And Rotary International is uniquely situated to be able to lead this effort. We will lift more people more decisively in their intellectual capacity in a shorter period of time than any other project ever. Again, I know this sounds like hyperbole, but I don't think it is. Putting it all together, it is within our reach. It is within our reach right now to materially improve the human condition by using these kinds of simple, inexpensive, proven projects and tools like we're working on today. That's the presentation. I hope that's interesting. Rushton, I'm coming in at 9 minutes and 37 seconds.
You're 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 doing great. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and have you stop sharing. I'll just introduce the group and then we will dive into questions because
Okay.
got plenty of them for sure. All right, it's cool to be able to introduce the group that we've got on the recording today. It's one of the perks of being in our club that you get to meet and talk with these amazing people doing great things, right? From our club, we have on Catalina Island in Southern California, Ernie Rodriguez. Ernie, good to have you. The Oregon contingent, an honorary member of our club, Heather Edwards, who sends out a howdy. Friend of the club in Budapest, Hungary, Victoria Grishmuller. Good to have you, Victoria. My name is Rushton. I am based in San Jose and work in San Mateo here in the Bay Area, and excited to leap into some of the pieces of this story. So first of all, Robert, I mean, so many interesting things that you're putting forward. How have you worked to partner with people locally so that the system itself doesn't suffer from being seen by the locals as just some outside group coming in to do what they think is best?
Well, that's a great question because you got to be aware. There's a lot of suspicion on the ground in developing world countries about what's your motive. Remember that first school I showed you at the very beginning, the first one I ever built? When I was there, laboring alongside the locals to get that thing finished up, after about 3 days, one of the local guys got comfortable with me, and he finally said, "What's your religion?" And I was very taken aback. But I didn't know at the time the Western countries led their colonization of the developing world with religion. And so it's really important to them. Is this the spearhead to some kind of Trojan horse thing? And I thought about it for a couple of seconds. I said, well, my religion is what I do. No, it's not what building I go into on Sunday. It's not what version of the creed I recite. It's what I do. And I say that as a background to your question, which is how do we not allow the local people to think we're coming in with our agenda? And the answer is that we work with local people, partners on the ground, non-governmental organizations that are very well established in their communities and very well known for their community uplift. For example, in Kenya, our partner has done more than 160 projects. In Nepal, we've done more than 90 projects. In Nicaragua, we've done more than 80 projects. Uganda, more than 60 projects. It's not we who are leading into these communities. It's those partners who are going into their communities and saying, hey, guys, we've got something that we think would really help us out a lot. Check this out. And when, for example, at that Sasaku school in Uganda, when they got an 80% increase in test scores after 6 months, I am telling you, people became believers because they understand they're not going to prosper if they continue with the mindset of mythology and fairy tales and magic. And you know what I'm saying? They understand they've got to get into the modern world and start doing real science. Rushton, did I answer your question?
You did. I'll build on it by looking at this pattern for success that essentially comes from incentivizing your partners to working with you effectively and reliably in order to be able to keep doing projects. That makes tons of sense to me. Now, with a lot of the projects that the Global Uplift Project has done over time, it also sounds like you've really done a lot of groundwork asking locals about, is this something that works for you? How do we need to change it in order for it to be effective? Am I characterizing that properly?
It's so right, exactly what you're saying. But I just want to contrast that with traditional development models where the Westerners come in and say, oh, well, we know what you need. Let's do this for you. It's like pushing on a string as opposed to allowing the other side to pull. Please go ahead.
Well, bringing that specifically to the science lab in a box, metaphorical box though it may be, SLaB. The question that Heather asked in the chat is this all high schools, or are there other age groups, and what is the logic for having it be focused or having it not be focused on a particular level?
Well, that's a really good question. To date, it has primarily been high schools because it's only in high schools that most of the world actually gets the kids into, doing hands-on stuff. Believe it or not, in the last year in Kenya, the Ministry of Education has promulgated a new curriculum where they're now saying middle school kids need to begin doing, elemental science lab work. And so we've created a mini SLaB. And that is, it's not a full-blown $3,000 slab. It's about a $1,500 slab. And here's the magic and why this works. We don't cram it down on the schools. We say to them, what equipment do you most need? You got a $1,500 budget or a $3,000 budget. You tell us what you need and we'll get it to you. Okay? So that's the answer to your question. It started out as high schools, but it is migrating because the countries are starting to recognize they've got to get kids into science earlier than, when they're 14 years old.
And just for clarity, when you say you have a $1,500 budget, you're saying that you have raised that money. Folks on the ground, what would you like us to do with it? Is that right?
It's not, it's actually is more enticing than that. We do is we tell them, you got a $1,500 budget. Now, you need to go out to 2 scientific vendors in your country, scientific equipment vendors, and develop your list and then get quotes for every single item, a Bunsen burner, a 400x microscope, whatever it is, pipettes, beakers, and get quotes on each of those. And then you're going to order the ones that are cheapest to fill out your $1,500 budget. So and this is necessary because not every school needs the exact same stuff. Maybe they've already got a 400x microscope, but they need, a voltmeter or, atomic scales or whatever it is. So they get to choose. We raise the money. And then when they have developed their list, got their quotes, we call it a QBM, quotable bill of materials. They send that to us. We pay the vendors, and the vendors ship the equipment to them. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I think that Ernie's question in the chat actually is a good way to build on that. So you talk about like the rise in test scores. His question is, what results or changes have you noticed since helping the community? So what other, whether it's quantitative or qualitative results are you seeing that allow you to essentially continue to build this model and iterations of it in terms of your projects?
That is a great question. One of the most powerful things we're doing is in Kenya. We developed a product called Save a Girl. It's a washable, reusable sanitary pad that we give to adolescent girls so they can manage their periods, so they can stay in school. Most people don't understand. Women are second-class citizens in most of the world because they have less education than everybody else. And the reason they have less education is because they drop out once they start their period, 12, 13, 14 years old. This product we give to those girls Now, here's the results. We've done longitudinal research on this. We've distributed more than 70,000 of these in Kenya. The results are the girls attend school at a higher rate. They perform better on nationally normed test scores. They graduate at a higher rate. They matriculate to college at a higher rate, and they have fewer pregnancies. If you want, go to our website, tgup.org. On the very front of the website, there's a green circle on the left-hand side, a white paper on Save a Girl on this project. By the way, on the left-hand side, there's also a green circle with the white paper on Science Lab in a box. But my point is you can see these results that are documented in that white paper. Does that make sense? Ernie,
Yeah,
did I answer your question? That's my real, did I answer your question?
he's giving you the nod. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Victoria and I have a pair of questions that I think allow us to explore the history a bit. Understanding that you started this speaking to a group of 1,700 and something, high schoolers in a gym, right? There has been an evolution of how the Global Uplift Project works. And a lot of that's going to come from your experience, that sense of like, oh, this is what I can do to do this better. So especially looking over the last 5, 6, 7 years, right? What
Yeah.
are the things that you would point to as understandings that allowed you to take what the organization is doing up a notch and then another couple and then another three and that kind of wonderful kind of progression that we saw in your chart?
Well, there's two that really stand out. The first is in 2020, when COVID hit, it shut down all the schools. We had to dramatically rethink our funding model. And so we shifted and we now work with service clubs, not only Rotary clubs, but that other group also. But think about it. The idea is the same. You've got a cluster of people, who can each put in a little bit. It may not be $1, it may be $10, $20. I call it the pocket change model. It's whatever, you can find that is not going to put you out. It's like that money you found in the couch. You didn't miss it because you never knew you had it, did you? Something small enough, but knowing that it's being combined with those of many, 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 many other people to do projects like this, it's an easy thing to do. So that's on the fundraising side. On the outbound side, this is hard to articulate, but we've been doing this long enough and we've been recording the details meticulously enough that we can tell anywhere, I can tell you anywhere in the world what it costs to build a classroom per square foot. I can tell you what it costs to build a seat in a latrine anywhere in the world. I can tell you down to the dollar the cost of what it should cost to put a desk into a classroom so that a kid isn't sitting on the floor. And we can go through all the projects this has given us so much, I guess you'd say, not power, but control and knowledge over what we're doing. Somebody comes to us and says, we'd like to build a library. Here's my proposal. I can point them to data saying, no, you're way out of line. That should cost this much. And the surprising thing in building is this. The costs end up converging all around the world because the cost to build a classroom comes down to raw materials, which is pretty common all around the world, and whatever it costs to feed an idle man. Because that's mostly how these things get done. We require the locals to contribute 20% of the cost of the project. And most of that is done by unskilled labor, men digging the trenches for foundations, carrying the stones, the bricks, stuff like that. And the cost of that is pretty much the same all around the world. So we've developed, literally massive amounts of data of what it costs. I'm talking from Indonesia to Cambodia to India to Nepal to all the countries of Africa to Haiti, Yucatan, Ecuador, Brazil, the countries of Latin America where we work. And that just gives us just enormous amounts of ability to control the costs and oversee the execution. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
You
And
can tell I'm a former teacher because I check for understanding.
no, no, no. As a current teacher, I fully understand and love it. I also love the passion you're bringing to the story. Often people don't really understand. They may have a wonderful project, but no one is passionately telling the story in order to develop the kind of support that can allow it to be successful. And I'll note for anyone listening to this podcast or watching this recording, one of the benefits of doing exactly what we're doing is that even after the recording, we're going to get to keep talking. And I'll tell you, Robert, I'm excited to introduce you to Victoria to talk about stuff she's done because you got a kindred soul in the work that she's done in Budapest for kids from Ukraine.
Okay.
But that also gets us to her question, which is how do you prioritize among different needs and projects? So you have so many different things going. You've figured out how to kind of set these things in motion at scale, but how for your organization, how does prioritizing work?
That's a good question. It works like this. Whenever we're engaged in a project, let's say I just finished a really big project in Kenya to do uh, upgrade a special needs school. Or in Uganda, we just finished building a coffee mill so local farmers can come and have their product harvested without the mill owner taking all the profit out of it. And I can go through, projects everywhere around the world, the same thing. Our partners on the ground know if they don't have another project queued up after this one is finished, we're going somewhere else. And they know exactly what our standards are for projects, so they don't queue up BS projects. So once one project is done, we've done the certification, notified the donors. We said, okay, what's next now? And then we evaluate what's next, one against another, all across the world. Again, because we can tell, I mean, down to a micro level, how many people are going to be benefited, how many people per cost of the project. And we generally, it sounds like a cold calculation. It's not always a hard calculation, but if I've got a project where it's going to benefit 1,500 people for $500, I'm going to want to go for that as opposed to one that'll benefit 1,500 people for $3,000. You see what I mean? And and this is part of the infrastructure, the intellectual infrastructure spanning, 5 continents that we've built over time. We do, however, have a bias for 2 projects, the Save a Girl kit that I mentioned, and I'll talk about why that is, and the Science Lab in a Box. I've already explained the Science Lab in a Box. Would you like to hear why we have the bias for the Save a Girl? This is insane, but the kit costs $7. It lasts 3 to 5 years. We're keeping girls in school for $2 per girl per year. It might be the highest return on human investment of anything in the world. And the World Bank says this. It says better educated girls are the most valuable resource in a society. Why? They defer sex longer. They are more likely to use birth control. They have fewer partners. They marry later. They marry higher status partners. They have fewer children. They make sure those children are better educated. They have better vocational options themselves. They contribute more to their community. That's the thing we're delivering to communities for $2 per child per year. It is literally insane. And I get back to what I said earlier. The reason females are second-class citizens in most of the world is because they have less education than the boys. If we can get them educated, we can effectively double the available human potential in the world. Almost in a generation, we could do that. I don't think there's anything in the history of the world where we've been able to say we could double the available human potential of the human race within one generation. And the cost is entirely linear. It's entirely incremental at $2 increments from here to eternity. Anyway, I could go on forever. I hope that's interesting. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does, and also speaks to one of the strengths of what you do, which is you use, like I said before, you use stories to help people understand the possibilities within their role as a donor, as a as a recipient, as a contractor. There's a lot within how these relationships work that seem to be powerful and allow for the psychotically ambitious, goals that you have. I think that's really great. I want to zero in on one though, because I think anyone who might be following this story really needs to understand how the role of numbers works. The Global Uplift Project, TGUP.org, that link is on the page wherever you found this recording, and follow it, study it. I've had students study it, matter of fact. But you say in your slides and in your talking, if this project improves Ugandan GDP by only 1/1000% in 10 years, it pays for itself 200 times over. That orientation to impact and impact, in terms of making a donation go a long, long way. Robert, you seem to have mastered that.
Well, once we got beyond children in 2020, like I said, when COVID closed down all the schools, we found out that people have a very legitimate question. So what's my donation going to get me? What's my donation going to get the world? And they don't want to see some sloppy hand waves about, oh, it'll be butterflies and bunnies and, rainbows. They want to see hard numbers. And we have learned, and this is what has driven our discipline. The better we can articulate and show people this is exactly where your money goes, what it buys, what the impact will be, compare it to the other projects. And in fact, we frequently present to prospective donors. They say, well, I'd like to make a donation, $10,000. We can present to them 5 different projects in 5 different countries, the nature of the project, the cost, the payback. That is so effective in convincing people this is a worthwhile donation. We didn't have to do that with teenagers because it's $1. I mean, who's going to miss $1? And teenagers don't have that calculating mentality yet. They still have idealism. Their idealism hasn't been wrung out of them yet. But once it has been, and they enter the rest of the world, people want to see what's my money going to buy, and that's why we have developed that discipline. We're very, very good at it. I have an MBA from Stanford for whatever that is, but that at least gave me the numerate skills to be able to do this. And as you saw from the chart up to the right, it's pretty effective. Did I answer your question, Rushton?
The response to that question has been consistent and continues to be so. Absolutely. So here's what I'm going to do, by the way. I'm going to wind down our recording just out of respect for the kind of time expectations people have about our recordings, although we'll be able to keep talking to you afterwards. And once I do the wind down, I'll hand it over to you, Robert, for a final message for those people who are finishing up the recording. All of you who have been watching or listening to this recording, thank you. We thank you for taking your time to listen to stories that can inspire you, to know that there are people out there who are doing amazing things for their communities. You turn on the news and it is one bad story after another. You know what I'm talking about. No matter where you are on the spectrum politically, it's just one piece of disaster after another. And yet there are stories like this happening all over the world. It's exciting for us to be able to serve our speakers and the work that they do by sharing these stories. And we hope that you will share the story as well, that you will pass along this podcast link or this video link or our meeting page link to someone who might need to know that something wonderful is happening in the world, because from their perspective, it's just a lot of darkness. So please share. We hope you will do that. As we always like to do, we hand it back to our speaker for the final word. Robert, finish us off.
This project has been startling for us, because the more we've gotten into it, the more we've realized how much you can do for so many people for so little cost. This project just in Uganda will touch 200,000 high school students who will, for the first time ever, be able to experience the tactile wonders of science in the laboratory. Comes out to a cost of 75 cents per student. It's so little to be able to awaken somebody's consciousness to the modern world. Now, after we finish with Uganda, as I said, there's 53 other countries in Africa we need to go to. And that's why we're so excited about being able to work with Rotary International like we are in the country, is because we're going to need feet on the ground to supervise, to manage the logistics of all of these installations. And I'll say what I said in the presentation. I believe that we'll be able to uplift the intellectual capacity of more people in a shorter period of time to greater effect than has ever been done by any project in the history of the world. I know that sounds hyperbolic, but it's actually working one SLaB at a time. I hope this is interesting, and I invite your participation. Get other Rotary clubs involved. If you know them, send them my way, and we'll let them be part of this exciting project also. Thank you.
Aim high indeed. Fantastic, Robert. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next week.